I knew I wanted to be a doctor when I was in elementary school. One of my favorite things to do was to lay on the futon with my father, brother, and sister, each reading our own book until we fell asleep. One of my favorite books that my dad bought me was called The Human Body. It had colorful pictures of body parts and surgeries. When my sister had ailments, I would treat her by copying things that I had read in the book. But I didn't really know what it meant to be a doctor. I thought it was giving medications and doing surgeries. But being a doctor is so much more than that. It's about getting to know people's stories, building relationships, and being with people through the mundane stuff as well as life-changing moments. My patients were the ones who ultimately transformed me into a true doctor. Throughout medical school and residency, I often felt like a fraud. I never felt like I knew enough. I often wished I could remove my brain and replace it with someone else's, someone who was more intelligent, analytical, and encyclopedic. Then I met George. George was a middle-aged man. He had burn marks over his entire body, and he was missing one leg. He was unshaven, sweating, and addicted to heroin. He came to the hospital because of an infection in his knee. When we first met, he was mean. He questioned everything that I said, he mocked me, and he was very demanding. But despite the way he treated me, I continued to visit him. I started to share pieces of my life and asked him about his. I learned that when he was a child, a doctor gave him painkillers after an injury, and that was the beginning of his addiction to opioids. I also learned that he used to be a firefighter, and the burn marks on his body were a result of a rescue mission. George ended up leaving the hospital many times against medical advice. He didn't trust us, nor did we trust him. So what surprised me was when George looked at me and said, "Sonny, you are a good doctor." At that time, I was an intern. I was crying a lot. I was having difficulty sleeping. So when George told me that I was a good doctor, it touched me. What George never knew was that he was healing me as much as I was healing him. He taught me through his trust in me. He saw the compassionate physician in me when I didn't yet see it in myself. It's because of him that I do the work that I do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The doctor leaned over my patient, Linda. Beads of sweat collected on her forehead. Monitors were beeping wildly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Linda had lost liters of blood. Her heart was quivering chaotically. As Jehovah's Witness, she wouldn't accept a blood transfusion. Tension was rising in the room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But I wasn't there. Linda was 55 years old. She was a 4-time cancer survivor. She initially came to see me for depression. When I listened to her heart, it was beating 160 beats per minute. "Linda, you have to go to the emergency room." It was the first time as a young doctor I had picked up a clue. It turned out that Linda had an infection in her heart. The doctors started her on antibiotics. I went to go see her. "Linda, how are you?" "Oh, Dr. Lai, I'm feeling much better. Will you be my primary care doctor?" Over the next month, Linda became sicker and sicker. The infection in her heart shot off in all directions. It made her blind in one eye, and it made her foot swell up. I continued to see her. "Linda, how are you?" "Oh, this is so hard." A few months passed. Linda called to let me know she was finally getting surgery to remove the infection in her heart. On the day of her operation, I got up extra early and I found her behind a curtain. Linda was on the phone with her mother. "Mom, Dr. Lai is here!" And then she grasped my hand, and I felt immense love and wholeness when I held that space with her. Then the nurses whisked her away. That night, I read over the surgeon's notes. I learned that she was still intubated. I tried to calm my fears, telling myself it was normal to be intubated after such a big surgery. On Tuesday, I didn't see her. On Wednesday, I had the sudden urge to visit her, so while I was in lecture, I tried to look her name up on the computer. I couldn't find her. I tried searching in different ways, and then my eyes scrolled to the bottom of the page. I saw the word discharged, and when I clicked on it, it said deceased. I started to cry silently. And when I couldn't hold it any longer, I got up and left the lecture hall. And when I was out of ear's reach, I cried out loud. Why didn't I visit her? I could have been there. That night, I wanted to communicate my sorrow with her family. I looked through a box of cards and I found a photograph of an enormous tree that towered over people. I chose this picture because whenever I'm in nature, there is an unspeakable knowing of the flow of life. I've come to realize that there is much more to life than the time we spend on this earth. There is life before us, and there is life after us. And even though Linda's heart has stopped beating, her love and being will always remain with me. I have immense gratitude for all of the people who allow us to take care of them and be a part of their lives.